This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on India-Denmark bilateral ties and Nordic summit significance. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Seema Guha, senior journalist.
This will be the second Nordic summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the leaders of Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland. The first was held in Sweden in 2018. This was an initiative by the Narendra Modi government. Will you explain to our listeners the importance of engaging with these five Nordic powers? What do they bring to the table?
They bring a great deal to the table. These five countries are located in the north of Europe, and three of them are members of the European Union, that is Denmark, Finland, and Sweden. And two others, Norway and Iceland, they are not members of the European Union, they are members of another organization called the European Free Trade Area. Now, they are in the northeast corner of Europe, and they tend to get ignored and neglected when we speak about these bigger organizations like the EU and EFTA. So I think it is very useful for India to have interaction, engagement, and partnership with these five countries, because although these might be small countries in terms of population, all the five countries together would be about 27 million people. But in terms of the total GDP, it is about $1.6 trillion. Extremely rich, extremely prosperous. But in addition to that, what they bring is they are in the top 10 as far as many of the human development indicators are concerned. If you were to look at the HDI, the Human Development Index that is brought out by the World Bank, all these five countries are in the top 10. They are democracies, they have rule of law, they have freedom of speech, freedom of media, gender equality. These are all values that we in India also espouse. And so India can work together with them. They have niche technologies, they have strengths in innovation, in creativity, in green energy, in e-mobility, in harnessing offshore wind for energy, waste to energy. So there are a large number of areas where we can plug into their strengths. And for them also, there are a number of areas, because India is a large country. It's a huge market. It is the third largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity, about $9 trillion. And even in nominal dollar terms, it's about just a little less than $3 trillion, and which is about the fifth or the sixth largest economy in the world. So it's a huge market. There is also these countries, they have small population, but they're also aging. They're also graying. While India has the youth dividend to its advantage, in its favor, we have a young population, which segments of that are very well trained. They are motivated. They are energetic. And there is this complementarity also between the two sides. Finally, what I would say is that the only other country with which the Nordics have such a summit-level relationship is the United States. But there also, they had meetings in 2013 when the then President Barack Obama had visited Stockholm. And then Mr. Obama invited the leaders of all these five countries to the White House in 2016. But over the last 6 years, there has been no interaction jointly at summit level. But for India, as you mentioned very rightly, that the first summit took place in April of 2018, and the second summit was to take place in Denmark last year in June 2021, but that could not happen because of the COVID-19. And I think it is to the credit of both Prime Minister Modi and the leadership of all these five countries that they have decided to not waste any time, but as soon as the situation and the circumstances permitted, to get together for the second India-Nordic Summit.
Sustainable development, digital innovative technology, all in the forefront of this engagement. And how much of this will translate into setting up manufacturing units in India and creating jobs for our people? And what are the big companies that, apart from Nokia and I think Saab, the Swedish defense manufacturers have a small flyer office here. But what else do they have? Can you just explain a little bit? And will they set up manufacturing here, and are they willing to give us technology?
Yes, they are very keen to share their technology with us because we need to realize that these are small countries, small markets. As I said, just about 27 million. So if they have these niche technologies in all the areas that you mentioned, climate change, innovation, green energy, technology, then the manufacturing only for their own market is not adequate. They want bigger markets. And in fact, they have been coming to India in a big way. If you look at just at Denmark, for instance, it's a small country, but we have about 200 Danish companies who are working in India. We have about 60 odd Indian companies who are in Denmark. Currently, the investment from the Nordic countries to India is in the range of $3.3 billion. Currently, the trade is about $13 billion, but that is far below potential. So these countries are looking at coming to India. They have taken many of these countries and the companies in these countries. For instance, you mentioned Saab from Sweden. But, many of the iconic names, whether it is even in the defense area, it is Bofors, in other areas, it is Volvo, Scania, it is ABB, it is SKF, Ericsson. There are a whole host of companies which have been in India. India still will be the fastest growing economy in the world at about 7.4% this year. So this is something which is of great interest to these countries. What we can see from here is that the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, she was present in person at the airport to receive Prime Minister Modi when he landed in Copenhagen earlier today from Germany.
Sir, can you tell us a little bit about this great importance that the Arctic region has now? It's now suddenly into focus last 10, 15 years. Why are world powers, whether US, China, Russia, India, they all want a toehold there? Can you explain to our listeners why the Arctic this region has become so important?
Arctic is the region around North Pole, and it is as yet very unknown, unexplored area. There are countries, there is an organization which is known as the Arctic Council. There are 8 members of the Arctic Council, basically, which surround the North Pole. So in that we have Russia, we have all the 5 Nordic countries, we have Canada, we have United States. So these are about the 8 countries which are members of the Arctic Council. India is an observer. We became an observer in 2013. And so also is China an observer, and that also became an observer in 2013. Now, this area is supposed to be extremely rich in mineral resources, whether it is fossil fuels, whether it is gas. But what the world is also concerned and anxious about is that if there is an exploitation of the resources that takes place in this region, it should be done in a sustainable manner. Also, what the world is concerned about is that there should be no militarization of this region, because that could lead to unforeseen consequences. Particularly now, I think that this anxiety and worry would have grown even further because of what we are seeing in Europe as far as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned. The last point I would like to make is that this area is now being used also for transportation. The northern network, this is being used for transportation. But if it is used even in winter so that you have ships to break the icebreakers are there, then it could create problems as far as ecology of the area is concerned. So they would like this all to be done, to be handled, to be managed in a very appropriate manner. The last point here on the Arctic would be that although China is an observer and it is not a member of the Arctic Council, but it is trying to project itself as a near Arctic nation. And so looking at what China has been up to in the South China Sea, in East China Sea, its assertiveness, its aggressiveness. So the countries are worried that if it starts coming into this region, then that could create difficulties and problems for the country and for the region. India, of course, wants to collaborate and cooperate and ensure that this, ecologically, this region remains a safe area, and to conduct research so that we know more as to how the global environment and climate can be controlled. And lastly, to promote sustainable tourism to that area.
Sir, you were talking about Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is the biggest crisis that has happened in Europe since the Second World War. And now we find that even Sweden and Finland, who were neutral countries, now they are lining up to join NATO. Now here it might be as their application may come in, these other speculations. But considering all this and the fact that India has taken more or less a neutral stand and refused to condemn Russia, how do you think the conversation between Prime Minister Modi and the 5 Nordic countries will go on this?
I think it will be a very good opportunity for Prime Minister Modi to listen to what these leaders have to say, particularly in the context of what you said, that Sweden and Finland, both of them are EU members, but they have not taken any action to move towards membership of NATO. But now, after the aggression that we have seen of Russia against Ukraine, these countries are also, there have been reports emanating from these countries that before the June summit of the NATO countries, that they would have put in their application for consideration for membership of NATO. And there are positive sounds also coming from the NATO leadership that they would be positively inclined. But these are the sort of reports that are coming in. So India has been handling, Prime Minister Modi himself has been handling all these discussions on the issue of Ukraine, whether it was with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen when she came to India, or with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, when he was in India, and also more recently when Prime Minister Modi has been in Germany and he's had discussions with the Chancellor Olaf Scholz. We have seen the reference to Ukraine in the joint declaration that was issued yesterday. And I think that is the position that Prime Minister Modi has taken, that India has taken, as you put it, a very balanced position, and also, I would say, a principled position which balances the values as well as the interests of the country. I will not say that we have been entirely neutral, because progressively, we have been, without using the word condemn or criticize, we have been expressing our unhappiness with the continuation of the war. And I think we need to recognize as to which country started the war, who started the war and who's continuing the war, irrespective of what, some elements might say, that it is the supply of ammunition and equipment and systems to Ukraine by NATO countries and other countries that is keeping the war going. But I would say that the war was started by Russia, and the onus of stopping the war or making some forward movement for stopping the war really to much greater extent rests with Russia. So we have said we want cessation of hostilities, we want peace, we want discussions, diplomacy, dialogue, and we have in no uncertain terms condemned the massacre in Bucha that has been perpetrated. Also, we have said that the provisions of the United Nations in terms of inviolability of borders, in terms of protection of territorial integrity and sovereignty of countries, that needs to be respected. So this is not criticism of the Russian action. I don't know what is. But we have not used the word condemn as maybe some of the Western countries might want. But in substance, right from 24th of February, when Russia invaded Ukraine, I think we have been voicing our opposition to the violation of U.S. principles and to the violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Denmark bilateral ties and Nordic summit significance. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Seema Guha, senior journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on a YouTube channel, News on AIR Official.